Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, From Breach to Defense, Reimagining Human Element Security Through Integration and Intelligence. I'm Crystal Turnbull with Living Security, and I'm excited to dive into one of the most critical challenges in cybersecurity today, human risk and its impact on your organization's security posture. Despite significant investments in sophisticated tools and complex tech stacks, human-driven breaches continue to challenge organizations. So today, we'll explore how adopting proactive, integrated strategies can help you manage human risk effectively and optimize your security investments. I'm really excited that we're joined today by three outstanding leaders to guide this discussion. First, we'll be welcoming Jinan Budge, VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester. She will be presenting her insights into the human element in cybersecurity and share how organizations can move beyond traditional siloed approaches to adopt strategies that strengthen security and proactively manage human risk. Jinan, of course, is a global authority on human risk management and the author of the most recent Forrester Wave Human Risk Management Solutions that was just recently published in Q3 of last year. So after Jinan joins, we will be joined by our co-founder and CEO of Living Security, Ashley Rose, and our president at Living Security, Mike Siegel, to discuss with Jinan in a fireside chat. So, of course, Ashley has been committed to helping organizations view their people as assets rather than liabilities. And her leadership has been key to shaping Living Security's mission of driving meaningful change in human risk management. We're really, really excited here at Living Security to have Mike on board. He brings over 25 years of leadership experience at companies like McAfee, ForcePoint, and SailPoint, with a very deep understanding and expertise in identity governance, user behavior analytics, and human-centric security. So our fireside chat will cover three topics: why siloed security tools miss the human element connection, how HRM enhances existing investments so that you can tackle your human risk, and then a couple of real-world examples of integrated defense systems driven by HRM. Please feel free to share any questions you have in the Q&A. We'll get to as many of them as we can. If not, we'll follow up with you later. And let's go ahead and dive in. Please join me in welcoming Jinan Budge to kick things off. Jinan, over to you.
Hello, thank you so much, Crystal. And I am now about to share my screen before we begin. So please let me know if there are any problems with seeing it. I presume everything is okay. Hello and welcome, everybody. Absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you very much to the Living Security team for having me on this webinar. The first part of today, I'm actually going to really hone in on human element breaches. I want to deconstruct them before we dive into solution mode. Organizations keep on suffering from security breaches. As we all know, this has been a problem since almost the beginning of time. Too many of these breaches, unfortunately, contain a human element. But these risks that are posed by human element breaches is inconsistently defined. They are either ignored or the recommendations are often limited to security awareness and training. My goal out of today, as I mentioned, is to really deconstruct this, to help us all understand the depth and breadth of human-related breaches in your organization and how you can use this understanding, hopefully, to implement the right security controls that you'll need to overcome them. So it's also probably not a secret to anybody who's been in cybersecurity for a while that we have tended to ignore security culture and human-related breaches for decades. I've been in this industry for 25 years, and I've seen the evolution of this conversation over my time. And I've been so delighted that over the last couple of years, we're really starting to talk about human-centric security, about the human element in cybersecurity. But the problem now, in my view, is that there's inconsistency about how we talk about human-related breaches. So let me show you a couple of things. So the latest DBIR report states that 68% of breaches are related to the human element, which according to that particular highly respected publication includes the use of stolen credentials and social engineering attacks. Other respected publications, such as the Office of Information Commissioner in Australia, which is where I'm from, as you can tell by the accent, those types of breaches sit at 65%, but they include something almost entirely different from what DBIR defines as human-related breaches. And for those of us in Europe, ENISA, another highly respected body, in one of their publications state that human-related breaches count for 13% of overall breaches. And again, while they include things like phishing, business email compromise, they don't include human error, and they include things like misinformation and disinformation. So there's confusion. And why is this confusion problematic? And shouldn't we just be grateful that we are talking about the human element and human-related breaches? So let me share with you what I think is the problem with us having this confusion. There are three main things, and I'm going to cover each one of them in a little bit of detail. When we don't have clarity about what we mean when we say human element breaches, I think we can absolutely tend to minimize the breadth and depth of human-related breaches. We can and we do limit the solution to these breaches to silver bullets, such as security awareness and training, or conversely, we can over-focus on technology. So let's now go through bit by bit. So I want to talk about minimizing the breadth of human element breaches. So whenever you ask anybody, and when I'm sitting here, if we were doing this webinar face-to-face, where I'm delivering keynotes, roundtables, when I ask the audience, what do you think constitutes human-related breaches? Generally, most people will mention elements of social engineering or human error. So all of the phishing, business email compromise, negligence, mistakes, etc., which is absolutely correct, but it is not the full picture. And I really think it's important that we do get the full picture before we dive into solution mode. And that is actually the subject of my upcoming research in collaboration with three of my colleagues. We ended up deconstructing human element breaches. And the problem turned out to be, as you can see from this figure, so big, so deep, and so broad that I ended up having to rope in almost every single member of the security and risk research team at Forrester to help us deconstruct this. And we ended up deconstructing 8 breach families containing 25 breaches. This, folks, is what's at stake when we're talking about human element breaches. And if this figure is too intense for you to read it all now, don't worry about it. You will get the slides. But if it's too intense, it's because it reflects a really intense problem. Attackers target humans in so many different ways, and all of us humans behave in so many different ways that open ourselves and our organizations up to attack. So this is point number one. We tend to minimize the breadth unless we have the clarity. The second point that I made is that we focus on silver bullets. Now, again, if we were all here together live, and if I were to ask all of you who has got a security awareness and training program, I would suggest that almost all of you will put your hands up. According to our data at Forrester, 97% of organizations are conducting some sort of security awareness and training. The problem of human-related breaches apparently does have a silver bullet, and one that is so accepted as general wisdom. In fact, when I was digging through the DBIR publication, there was this one paragraph that says, You see, when DBIR authors and the whole industry in general would discuss the human element breaches metric, it would be alongside an opportunity gap for security awareness and training. It is not perfect, but if you had a clear investment path that could potentially improve the outcomes of more than 2/3 of security breaches, you might as well sit down and listen. So completely as they see it, or as they seem to see it, human-related breaches, you train people out of it. Yet, despite 97% of us having some sort of security awareness and training program, human-related attacks continue to grow. We see the figures of business email compromise, for example, from the FBI. They've quadrupled in 5 years. CISOs have not yet instilled a security culture. We keep on causing friction to learners with training. And honestly, no one knows what the outcome of this training is from the perspective of what behaviors have changed. So while awareness of security, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting it's not important, it's hugely important, but it can never also replace the role of technology. Which brings me to the third problem that we have when we don't have clarity. When we don't have clarity, there is a tendency to go from either training is the silver bullet and the solution to everything to technology is the solution of everything. Let's bury our heads in the sand and completely ignore the role of not just training, but humans in breaches. And look, that is problematic. There are some breaches like social engineering or human error that are really, really easy to associate with people. Others, like Gen AI misuse, they're a little bit more difficult to understand the role of humans in all of this, given the technological nature of them. Yet, it is people who relied on inaccurate Gen AI content that led, for example, the Australian Federal Parliament to publish an inaccurate submission. I'm going to conclude this problem space section just by saying that unless we understand that all of these things are human-related issues that has a potential human solution, it's really easy to try and rely on either technical controls or on training as the do-it-all. Now, let's start diving a little bit into solution mode. So to effectively thwart these human breach attempts, first of all, we need to understand them, as we've discussed, but then also really understand, well, what is the right control combination that we need to manage them? We've really, I know holistically is a well overused term, but we've just got to be holistic about this. Again, I was really lucky to lead this research and rope in almost every single member of the security and risk team, because when we dived into it, each one of those breach families that we dissected actually has got a number of security controls and tools and categories that you can use to combat these breach families. And I've listed some of those for you, and others we've had to grey out. So as you can see, it's not just training, it's not just one control, it is a whole of security tools and technologies and processes and people that have to come together. And of course, then you see that we've got dots for human risk management across all of these different breaches. And I do want to introduce it, and we're going to be having an amazing discussion with Mike and with Ashley after this. But let me just introduce human risk management, especially for those of you in the audience who may not be familiar or might think that this is just the latest buzzword. So human risk management, put at its most simplistic, it is a data-driven way to detect, measure, and manage the human risk. Today's human risk management solutions use a set of inputs to quantify the risk that a person or a team is exposed to or exposes themselves or an organization to. And based on that risk, it gives us the opportunity to manage this risk. We can now, in this new modern world of human risk management, we can offer the right intervention to the right person at the right time. So I really wanted to position this because I just want to remind everybody in the past, we just had security awareness and training as the silver bullet, or we completely ignored the whole thing. Human risk management it's a whole new world that really does have the potential to help us all again detect and manage exactly what's going on. And I really want to be clear that human risk management, like everything else, it's not a silver bullet. In fact, it has to work in harmony with other security technologies, processes, and people. It works in harmony because it uses all of these different tools and categories to understand people's behaviors. How are they using their passwords? Are they using multi-factor authentication? Are they using password managers? Are they enabling VPNs on their devices? It also correlates telemetries from all of these different solutions to have a look at an individual, have a look at an organization, and see if there are risks that we haven't seen before. And based on these risks, we then have the ability to, again, offer people what they need at the point of behavior. And once you put all of this together, then we're reducing alerts in all of these different tools that I showed you as well. I know that's a lot, and I will wrap up my presentation. We will be diving into this in a lot more depth in the fireside chat, but I did just want to kick us off with that deconstruction and that very quick deep dive. So looking forward to the discussion.
All right. Thank you so much, Jinan. That was a wonderful presentation. I saw a lot of really great feedback going on in the chat, and I'm really excited to deep dive now into this next section, which is our fireside chat with myself and Mike. Mike, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's kick it off. So, Jinan, you presented this content for the very first time last month at the Forrester Security and Risk Summit. So I'm really curious, what has the feedback been? What have you heard? How have conversations changed since bringing this amazing research into the world?
Okay, so let me just start by saying that the Security and Risk Summit was only a month away, a month ago. So it's really hard to say what may have changed in the last month. But let me give you an overview of what I've seen. As you well know, Ashley, I've been covering this space for 7 years now, and we introduced human risk management as a term and as a market in Forrester in February this year. I'm going to start by saying that the blog where we released our intent to change the market name and introduced human risk management is one of the highest read, if not the highest read blog that the security and risk team has published at Forrester this year. So to me, that signals the deep level of interest from all of us here on this topic, and that absolutely it makes me so happy because we've been complaining about security awareness and training for so long. But we haven't really quite put our finger on, well, what else? Like, can we just stop critiquing? So that's really cool. The feedback, as you can appreciate from the keynote, was absolutely incredible. But it's also reflective of the feedback that I've been receiving from my clients and the various roundtables that I've ran over the last 12 months. I talk about this frequently, but I ran a roundtable in October last year, a technology executive roundtable, so not purely a security one. And I was introducing human risk management and explaining how it might work. And somebody next to me, one of the technology executives, turned around and he said, if what you're saying is true and if it exists, this is a game changer for all of us. And I'm like, I know it is true and it does exist. So, for me, I think what I would like to summarize the market reaction is we're at a point in time now where human risk management is no longer an if or even a when, but a how. How do we and definitely the questions I'm getting from my clients on a day-to-day basis, how do we implement all of this in our organization?
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you sharing the feedback that you heard. I think in preparation for this call, if I can share, I think the terminology that you used, you said, the customer saying, my mind is blown. And certainly Living Security has participated in some of those mind-blowing moments. We have calls all the time where we're looking to educate and inform on how the future of the market is transforming. It's really fun. It's actually like one of my favorite parts of this job. But you touched on something towards, the end of your response, which is how do we do this? And so I want to just present a follow-up question. What are some of the most common challenges that you're seeing organizations face when actually integrating human risk management into their existing security strategies?
Yeah. And look, I think if I reflect back on 2022 and 2023, the biggest question was what is this? Like, what's this human risk management terminology? And as you remember, Ashley, we had to do a lot of that thought leadership, a lot of educating the market, a lot of bringing people on a journey. That there are still, of course, that confusion about what's human risk management. Is this just, as somebody awfully called it, is this just lipstick on a pig, referring to, is this just security awareness and training 2.0? Hopefully, as you would have seen in the slides, and you will continue to see throughout the discussion, it's not. This is actually not even an evolution, it's a revolution. Where I think probably the two biggest challenges that I'm seeing is that this is so new that organizations, even if they had access to the solutions, they don't know what to ask for. They don't know what to ask their sales teams of their providers for human risk management solutions for. Even if they did, they don't really know where to begin, what behaviors to measure, what the benefit is. So that's probably, they don't really know how to use it. It's different. It's new. The second part is that there is a little bit of confusion with other tools as well. So I did have a customer recently who was like, but you're talking about behaviors. So therefore, this is just like our insider risk tool that we bought a few years ago and never used, isn't it? And I'm like, no. It's kind of different. It's, and we proceeded to have that discussion about the overlap and the differences between human risk management and insider risk. And it's quite nuanced, but it's really, really important discussion. So I think we're at a point where, okay, we're here now. So how do we do this? How do we understand where to start? How do we understand how to progress and how to become more mature?
Absolutely. And we're excited to dig into a lot of that today, and obviously in follow-up conversations. But you hit on one key point that is, I think, going to be a major part of this conversation. And it's actually why I asked Mike to join, which is how do human risk management tools kind of play in the sandbox with other, security technologies? And so I want to kind of pose a question to Mike to first kind of set up and maybe extend upon the presentation that you just gave around human element breaches, right? Because we have all of these great tools and they're all wonderful and they all are, have a purpose, but they're still missing something, right? And so my question for you is, how do siloed tools impact an organization's ability to identify and mitigate human risks? Like, what is the gap that we're facing today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And thank Jinan for walking us through your thoughts on this space. It's actually a very exciting time for human risk management because we're addressing some of the issues that perhaps we've been building up over the years with siloed tools. They often operate in isolation, right? They're analyzing specific data points without providing a unified view of user behavior, of access, and of threats. And this fragmented approach can leave some critical gaps, such as failing to connect repeated risky behavior, such as phishing susceptibility, with high-level access to sensitive data. And so as a result, organizations struggle to prioritize the most significant risks and may actually allocate resource to lower priority issues, further delaying response to these high impact threats.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mike. That's a great overview. I think the audience would love to hear, and maybe you can help us, like, can you provide some more specific examples of, as you talked about, siloed tools, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about our insider risk tools, our endpoint tools, even our phishing simulation tools, our email security tools, our SEGs. Like, they all serve a purpose, but give me examples of how they're failing to detect those human risk indicators that you mentioned.
Sure. Yeah, and they do all serve a purpose. But there are a number of examples where siloed security tools really fail to detect the human risk indicators that we're going to be talking about today. So why don't we start with phishing susceptibility, where it meets access risk. So phishing simulation tools, for example, identify users who consistently fall for phishing attempts. But these tools lack the ability to evaluate the implications of that risk based on a user's access level. So we should ask ourselves, shouldn't an effective attack simulation system also flag high risk and susceptible users? Another example is detecting insider threats. You mentioned that earlier, but linking those to departing employees, for example. Endpoint detection tools might flag suspicious file transfers, but they're generally not designed to correlate this behavior with context, such as, is an employee, have they recently submitted their resignation? So wouldn't correlating suspicious activity with behavior data uncover insider threats quicker, perhaps? Yet another example is vulnerability management tools, which identify technical weaknesses but lack visibility into whether affected users are actually engaging in risky behavior. So shouldn't technical vulnerabilities and user behavior be correlated for effective vulnerability management? And finally, we all know that SIM tools play a vital role in threat detection, but they're also known for flooding SOC teams with alerts without providing a narrative that connects technical anomalies to user behavior. So, shouldn't technical anomalies be connected to user behavior to really truly make sense of SIM data? There is really a simple conclusion we can arrive at through these examples. By connecting the dots between user behavior, access levels, and technical vulnerabilities, security professionals can transform scattered insights into powerful, actionable risk profiles. And this holistic approach not only prevents breaches, but also streamlines security operations, ensuring security teams focus on the risks that truly matter.
I cannot agree more, Mike, and thanks for providing some of those very tactical, right, examples of how we could think about, this type of approach. So I'm going to transition a little bit, and we started to touch on it in some of these examples, but I think, we're all wondering, and Jinan, you mentioned this, we have customers that are also asking, is this like that? Or could this tool not deliver on the same thing? So let's dive a little bit deeper. How can human risk management not just complement, but actually enhance the existing security investments that we're already making? And so, Jinan, how do you respond to customer inquiries about the value add of an additional platform, right? When organizations are spending so much money on these security tools today? We talked about how we address that gap, but yeah, how can we merge those two things together? And how are you talking to customers about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to try really, really hard to not repeat what Mike said because he had some real gold in there, and I wish you could kind of capture it in some kind of a Q&A and share it with people, because I think some of the nuances that Mike talked about, I don't know, you almost assume that they're happening. You almost assume that something somewhere is correlating all of these different telemetries from all of these tools, but it's not. So when customers come and ask me about, say, for example, that insider risk solution, I really had to dig in and understand, okay, well, what do insider risk tools actually give us? What are they? How do they interact with users? Is that the same as human risk management? Is that sufficient? And, when you ask the question, is that sufficient? Then you move to what Mike is saying. Actually, maybe, but then, gosh, how amazing is it if you add some context to that, some context about the person's identity, who they are, how senior they are in an organization, how much access do they have, what valuable information do they have access to, what location are they in? Once you start correlating all of these things together, you can find a completely different risk profile from that individual, other than, oh, they've simply just sent themselves an email to their home address. So I think that correlation piece for me is so significant. The other thing that I do want to remind, and I do remind everybody of, human risk management is the one solution that is actually focused on humans. Humans is at the center of everything that we do. Human behavior. Whereas the other tools, the other technologies, they're very focused on, and as they well should be, on vulnerabilities and on threats. This is not necessarily about the people. And they are certainly not about how we interact with people, how we protect people, how we meet people where they're at. They're about technologies, they're about endpoints, they're about email systems. But the people component in other tools and solutions tends to be a secondary thought. I would love to sit here and tell all of you that security is moving to a future that is human-centered, and that all of our tools and solutions and technologies place humans at the heart, but we are nowhere near that. And when we are, I'd love to write that research. But right now, human risk management is the thing that focuses on people. The third and final thing that I want to mention is that human risk management gives us the opportunity to interact with people in the most useful way. At Forrester, we call that interventions. We can intervene by training, which is, we've all done it. We all, we've got regulatory compliance requirements to meet, but we can also interact with people by nudging, by coaching, by providing them information at the time when they take a risky behavior that is actually helpful to them. And I think for me, that's such a game changer, to reduce that friction, to reduce this ineffectiveness of all these once a year computer-based training programs. We can even start going to a place where, if we see that the risk profile of an individual is just getting at an unacceptable level, we can update policy. We can reduce the access of the person, for example, so they don't put themselves or their organization in the way of harm. And for me, who, again, in the industry for 25 years and has always had this deep passion towards the people that we're serving in cybersecurity, how amazing is it to not be bombarded with training, but to just be protected? I'll stop now, because obviously this is something I feel very strongly about, but they're my three things.
I love that. And if we did not all three feel very passionately and strongly about this, I think we shouldn't have been invited to this webinar. So I'm gonna let you roll, or let you cook, I guess my kids would say. So okay, let me follow up here. Do they say that you're in Australia? We'll have to talk about that.
I won't even tell you what they say. I don't know. Like, they call me bruh, so they say all sorts of things.
Like my house on a daily basis. So we'll talk about that in a side tangent. Okay, so Mike, turning over to you, Jinan, you just gave a really great understanding of how can we complement, what can interventions look like, where are the gaps, right? How do we bring these things together? I want to follow up with sort of a two-part question. So the first, and I'm going to make this a little bit more relevant to living security, obviously, with you joining our team over the last month, you've been deep diving Unify and working alongside of our customers and our customer success teams. So what unique insights or benefits does Unify provide that other tools don't? And then taking that a step further, right, we talked about, rather than being competitive to, how can Unify or an HRM platform actually complement those current investments? And can you give us some additional examples there?
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love the passion from Jinan. I think I share that as well. In the decades that we've both been in security, I think, there's the bang your head against the wall moment where we're trying so many things and we're still getting breached, right? We're still having attacks. And so this idea of bringing the human element into a security posture and using that as a new way to identify risk. I think forward-thinking organizations are recognizing that this is something that they absolutely need to start to incorporate into their strategy. And so how does Unify, which is the platform from Living Security, do that? Well, first, Unify takes a holistic approach by integrating, again, behaviors, threats, and identity and access data to provide a more complete picture of risk across the organization. So we do this by analyzing data from these traditional security tools that we've been talking about throughout the webinar, like your email security gateway, your IAM, your EDR, and your data loss prevention capabilities. Unify then enriches these tools by adding behavior-based insights, such as identifying patterns of risky behavior, identifying repeat offenders, or access anomalies. And unlike other siloed security tools, Unify connects these insights into a comprehensive risk profile for every single employee within the company. This enables security teams to see beyond the isolated technical alerts and focus instead on the broader human risk landscape. So this comprehensive view ensures that risks are contextualized. We can understand what's happening in the context of human behavior and then prioritize them effectively, not just within our one tool, but across the entire organization's security ecosystem by taking the valuable data that we produce within Unify and making use of it in the other tools that you're already using today and extending that value. So Ashley, you asked me to maybe deep dive a little bit into, how we do that. And so think about all of these different security events as disparate events that are generated by security tools today, and then looking at them through this unique lens. So we first analyze that data and correlate it again to prevent this contextualized, actionable intelligence, helping prioritize risk based upon potential impact. And by correlating data from these tools like the email security, the IAM, the DLP, et cetera, Unify highlights risks that these isolated tools might miss, ensuring that security teams focus on the most significant of these risks. An example would be Unify combining event data from email security tools such as our partners Proofpoint and Abnormal with data from IAM tools from partners like SailPoint and Okta. In doing so, Unify unlocks new insights, such as the identification of users who are repeat offenders, like those who regularly click on phishing links. We take this combination of data sources even further by surfacing relevant and contextualized insights around an individual's level of access to sensitive data or their role within the organization. For example, if a repeat offender has access to financial systems or sensitive intellectual property, they represent a significantly higher risk to the organization. This insight allows security teams to prioritize targeted interventions for these higher risk users over those with more minimal access.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Mike. And, we talk a lot about with our customers how the kind of history or the origination, right, of security awareness and training pre-HRM developed programs that became very static and reactive. And so I love how we're able to help programs and security teams move into the future of looking at these things through a very unique lens and enriching that through multiple data points so they can be more proactive, but also very targeted in their approach. And ultimately, as you noted, really be more efficient at allocating their resourcing, which I think is extremely critical, especially today. One of the studies I was reading recently, it's an older study, but I thought it had a really good statistic that I would share. So there's a Promon study, 2/3 of surveyed cybersecurity professionals claim they experienced burnout again, it was an older study back in 2022. I can only imagine with the emergence of, new threats, that maybe that percentage has actually increased. So you talked a little bit about this, right? That efficiency play, but let's dive a little bit deeper in how can a human risk management solution help with prioritizing those human-related security risks, ultimately help reduce security team burnout and alert fatigue. So, Jinan, I want to turn this one first over to you. I think you've developed a really unique perspective and a very passionate thesis around this.
Yeah, and hopefully it's more than a thesis. One of the biggest, I think, pieces of research that I delivered last year alongside of my human risk management work was actually our research on burnout in cybersecurity. And burnout is, I would call it an epidemic in cybersecurity, and another thing that we just completely don't pay attention to. What I really want to be clear on is that alerts are, there's a lot of talk out there sometimes that, oh, if we reduce alerts, we're going to reduce burnout. They're not the only contributor to burnout in cybersecurity. Burnout in cybersecurity is an imbalance of three things: resources. I'll go into the burnout research later, but it is still alerts and fatigue and silos within security teams. They're still a really important part of the equation of why we are all so exhausted. So, Ashley, to your question, one of the other pieces of research that I published late last year focused on the relationship between some of these burnout and siloed elements and breaches, actually. So, for example, we found out that security teams that suffer unacceptable levels of absenteeism, so everybody is so tired, so burnt out, so exhausted, people are taking more sick leave than usual. They've got heavy workloads, increasing complex attacks. They report more internal and external breaches than other organizations. Security teams that say their teams are siloed also report more breaches. Security teams that are so anxious about reporting issues that impact cyber risk and don't have that psychological safety within their organization, within their teams, they report 3.5 times more internal breaches than the global average. Like, let's just mull on that for 1 second. 3.5 times more breaches if you don't feel psychologically safe in your job. And these are big problems. So anything that we can do to create psychological safety, to be really clear on our definition and communication of risk, anything that reduces security teams' workout, manage complex attacks. These are very human things that we've tended to put in this human bucket, soft skills, but there's nothing soft about this. This is impacting the number of breaches organizations are getting. So I wanted to put out there now human risk management, how it helps with reducing alerts. I would love to hear your perspective, Mike and Ashley, but just very simplistically speaking, when you are managing risk, when you are helping users to curtail their behaviors, the security tools, all of these different security tools will be getting less alerts and less things for the security teams to deal with. Very simplistically.
Yeah, Jinan, that was going to be exactly my follow-up, right? The idea here is if we can be more proactive, we're going to require less alerting from a reactive nature for us to follow up on, right? I do think that's very simple. That is a simplistic way to think about it, but also very actualized. But you touched on something that I think is potentially even more critical, right? And something that is very unique. So I appreciate you sharing some of those statistics, but those are very human things, right? All the not feeling connected, not feeling safe and secure in our environment. And as much as we talked about siloed tools, it feels like the users then of these tools also operate in a very siloed way. So we've been developing a perspective on this as well. And I'll turn this one over to Mike. Mike, maybe share a little bit of some of the things that we've been learning. And also, to share, we're also seeing progress being made on through human risk management coming to the table and bringing some of these teams together. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you. Would love to hear your perspective on this.
Sure, absolutely, Ashley. And we do. We work with diverse security teams every single day of the week, right? And so we learn about how they do their work. And the reality is that still a lot of security teams work in a very siloed fashion where, each member of the team plays their own functional role. And frankly, the hope is that somehow, if everyone does their part, it will all ultimately come together in some magical way to deliver the security outcomes that the CISO has committed to delivering for the organization. And so this siloed nature of work is exacerbated by the fact that the various members of the security organization, they actually see the world differently and they don't often speak the same language. One member of the team sees the world in terms of alerts, vulnerabilities, patches. Another sees the world in terms of devices. And yet another sees the world in terms of network traffic, packets, and IP addresses. But the reason that an HRM platform like Unify has the potential, frankly, to break down these silos and bring the work of security teams together under one umbrella is the fact that Unify takes into account all the data from across the entire security stack and then normalizes that data through the lens of the humans in the organization. Now the various members of the security team can see their work through this shared lens and the common language of human-centric risk. They still see their alerts and devices and IP addresses, but they can now contextualize and operate on those through the shared lens of humans and how their behaviors relate to those concepts. Human risk management becomes the common thread that ties all of their disparate work together and connects it directly to the high order security objectives that the CISO is trying to achieve.
Well, I want to draw attention to a couple points that you both shared. I think you said earlier, Jinan, you said, maybe we're not quite there, but like there is a world where maybe security is oriented around the human. And, Mike, you shared, right, this shared lens and this common language of human-centric risk. So sounds like a really exciting future from my standpoint. So with that, and just to kind of wrap up this last section, I want to take a little bit of a view towards the future. Back to Jinan, how do you see human risk management preparing organizations for future security challenges that current tools may not adapt to and address?
Yes, and look, I think there's some, and there was an excellent question in the chat about, well, what was our criteria for defining a human element breach? And look, we decided to keep it very simplistic, actually, because I think we just have to be very, very practical here. I know the DBIR does an excellent job at saying what constitutes what type of threat based on motivations, causes, outcomes, etc. For us, we looked at risks posed by and to humans. Just at the very simplest level, some of the human-related breaches on our wheel were very, very easy to identify that they are related to humans, especially things that we have tendency to train people on. And others are a little bit less obvious. We talk about, I had a client guidance session a couple of nights ago about how do we develop emotional immunity in the workforce towards things like deep fakes. And when I think about the complexity of deep fakes and what they're introducing, not just to organizations, but to us individually and to us in society, I'm like, I've no idea how we can do that. When I looked at training about deep fakes from all of the different vendors and providers, it was quite frankly quite terrible. And it's it didn't meet the mark. And I think it didn't meet the mark because as soon as we find something to train users on about deepfake technology changes. And like those red flags that you can use to identify, like eyebrows, all of a sudden that's no longer a red flag. Like they've nailed it. The attackers have nailed it. I think deepfakes are democratizing attacks, actually. It's making it very, very simple. And then you look at some of the technologies that are used to detect and identify deepfakes, which are mercifully with us now, but they, again, they are not developing at a rate fast enough. So I don't have the answer for that now, but I do see human risk management as a potential solution to this, in that we should be able to combine both these training behavioral elements that, what are the behaviors that people do or don't do to make them victims of deepfake, as well as telemetry from technologies to be able to respond appropriately, whether proactively to train people or dynamically at the point of a risky behavior. And I think that's where we need to go. Again, I'll be lying to all of you if I said we're there. And I haven't seen any tangible examples of what I'm talking about, but that's where I see the future. That's where we need the future to be.
I think that's a great answer, and something that's certainly top of mind for most, if not all, organizations that we work with, right? Is what's the future of AI and deep fakes, and how does this change the risk landscape and how we counteract that? I'm encouraged because by definition, as we've been talking about today, right, understanding both what is the behavior that's associated with, a potential attack or a potential risk by a human, with the understanding of the threat, right? What they may come in contact with, a deep fake, but also layering in that access level. We should, right, in its most simplistic form, really be able to prioritize who and what and when we are contextually training or nudging or applying policies and controls in effort to avoid, right, some attacks coming in from that nature. So I'm really encouraged by this, actually, and I think you could name a number of examples, and I in fact would love to dive a little bit more into some more real world examples as we come up here to towards the end of our webinar. So. In this next section, let's do that. Let's dive into some real world examples of human risk management. And so I'm going to turn this one over to Mike. We've seen our customers really embracing human risk management as a huge part of their strategy, to improve overall security posture and being able to act on quantifiable data. So can you give us a couple more examples of HRM in action?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love talking about the future, and we're an innovative company here at Living Security, and we'll continue to be on the forefront of identifying new risk. But there are actual risks today that our customers are dealing with and uncovering and mitigating using our unified platform. So what's really interesting is when HRM uncovers the root behaviors that are causing security concerns. So one example I want to share is a large financial institution, a large credit union that we work with, that faced challenges ensuring adoption of multi-factor authentication, or MFA, policies. So while they were monitoring MFA hygiene, right? So like who's using it, who's not, they noticed that one group of employees, these are employees that interact directly with the credit union's members in the branches, they were introducing risk by not using MFA correctly, and they were a little bit perplexed by that. With Unify, our customer was able to drill down into the specific cohorts of users to identify this particular group of employees. And the risk indicators surfaced by Unify led to conversations with those employees, where the CISO learned that at the branches, these employees are actually not allowed to carry their phones in front of their customers, their members, and they don't have them in hand. Yet these employees will be working on their computers, and the MFA will pop up and will prompt them to type in the MFA code. but they can't actually complete the authentication at that moment because their phone is not at hand. And this caused frustration for the bank employees. But the CISO didn't know any of this until he saw the data and then dug into the reasons. Now he's creating an action plan that enables these employees to authenticate right on the spot without a cell phone, which will be a lot less frustrating for everyone involved.
I love that example. And, of course, I've heard and been a part of this story before. I think what I love about it, though, is it exists a little bit outside of the bounds of what, people may think about as a benefit of human risk management, right? This turned into a conversation. And I think part of the question that we need to ask ourselves is, how do you have conversations at scale? And like, where should you even start with having these conversations? Many organizations set up specific teams, right? Just like a BISO team, for example, just for this reason. So how do we connect security closer to the business and what's actually happening on the ground floor? So yeah, I love that you shared that example. I'm going to turn it over to Jinan. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you're hearing the market and security teams looking to solve for, where human risk management tools are the right answer, right? Known or unknown risk from that perspective?
I think at this stage, the challenges remain, they remain fairly standard. I think the biggest challenge at the moment is still how do we reduce friction on the workforce? How do we not overload people with training? And how do we solve for the problem of only intervening with the users at the point of risk? And that is a really attractive problem to solve. How do we have better metrics? Last night I was reviewing one of my clients' risk dashboards, human risk dashboard, where like probably 95% of current human risk dashboards that I see was all about how many people completed the training and the phishing simulations clicked on. And he was like, there's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way. That's a challenge that he wanted to solve. I'm speaking to a lot of clients and members of the security community who's like, we know there's a better way. What is the better way?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Mike, I know there was another recent example of a customer that we were talking to, right back to the training side, where they had faced some challenges, and I think in the past, if they had seen some of these challenges, they would have opted into probably some type of spray and pray, or one size fits all training campaign to everybody in the organization, but that they actually were able to react differently. So maybe can you share that story with our group here as we come up towards the end of our call?
Sure. Yeah. One last great customer use case example here, and again, it is that difference between compliance-based training and actually addressing the underlying root cause. So this was an example of a utility company out of Arizona, and they transformed their entire cybersecurity strategy, frankly, using Living Security's Unify platform. So during implementation of Unify, it revealed that a new hire had 24 login failures within 30 days, right? Pretty high number. And it signaled to them a gap in credential management and their own onboarding process. And this insight led our customer to provide targeted coaching on passphrase creation, reducing credential-related incidents, and improving the employee's security behavior through that targeting. By shifting from a compliance-based training regimen to a data-driven, risk-focused approach, our customer was able to tailor programs specifically to these employee behaviors and align efforts within their organizational priorities. Unify enabled our customer to make measurable improvements, such as correlating behavior scores with top organizational risks and addressing security gaps more proactively. So these real-time data insights that I just described, through those, our customer enhanced their visibility into decision-making platforms. They had these targeted interventions, for a phrase that Jinan used earlier, for high-risk groups. and they empowered employees to take ownership of their own cybersecurity responsibilities. So with Unify, our customer felt like they strengthened their own security posture. They introduced then personalized risk scorecards, and ultimately they feel like they built a more resilient organization. And we're proud of the work that they did and Living Security's hand in making that possible.
Great example. Thanks, Mike. Well, we're here towards the end of our hour, unfortunately, because I feel like we could keep sharing amazing customer stories and also just talking about, the future of where we're going and how we can continue to help this market transform. But I want to wrap up with one last question. Jinan, where do you see human risk management going from here?
So when we published in 2022 the research on the future of security awareness and training, we said that human risk management is it's going to be used as a stepping stone from security awareness and training to take us to a future that we decided to call adaptive human protection. We're still about 5 years away from that future. But what that future is, it's people, processes, and technologies finally working together to detect and to anticipate human behavior and to meet people where they are, to adjust policies, training, technologies to protect people in a way that requires minimal or no effort on their part, and also to enable people to participate in their own security. And I think that is something that we've not really done that empowerment to people. And we do this by giving them context and actionable guidance at the right time, in the right place for them. Like, imagine that future. Imagine how amazing it would be if security could become that profession.
I absolutely love that. And I would say in order to achieve that exciting future, it's going to require all the things we talked about here today, breaking down silos, not just with, the different tools, but within the vendor community, right? We have to be able to partner and work effectively together. And then taking that into our organizations where security teams then are breaking down silos and effectively working together, all in the best interest of our employees and that empowerment and this, better together and more secure future. So thank you both so much for joining us today for this conversation. Thank you to everybody on the webinar as well. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to continue that conversation on February 20th on our next webinar, where our product team will showcase Unify, our human risk management platform. And we're going to walk you through, how do we integrate with your existing tools to provide more actionable insights and prioritize the risks that really matter most. So be on a lookout for that link to sign up via email. And of course, if you'd like to see how Unify can work in your organization, you can book a personalized demo anytime at Living Security. Thank you again for being a part of today's discussion, and we look forward to connecting with you all again soon.